So I want to talk about some military movements and Trump tweeting my fellow Americans, as well as a slew of other things, especially with the military and some of the action we're seeing in the Gulf and especially with Venezuela. So let's get right into it. So first, there's a tweet that is going around that, again, he talks about a lot of announcements and how he's going to address certain things. But in this particular tweet, he says, "My fellow Americans, I will be giving an address to the nation tomorrow night, live from the White House at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard. I look forward to, quote, seeing you then. This has been a great year for our country and the best is yet to come." And so this comes when everybody is looking to Twitter, and for him to tweet this. Post 55 talks about, look to Twitter, exactly this, "My fellow Americans, a storm is upon us." And a lot of people, anons, are waiting for that and what that means. And then also in other tweets, or rather in Q post 55 is what I just read, but 35 and 34, he also talks about "my fellow Americans," and the famous one, 34, where he says that over the course of the next several days, you will undoubtedly realize that we are taking back our great country from the evil tyrants that wish to do us harm and destroy the last remaining refuge of shining light, as well as the other 35 where it talks about this whole operation and he's going to be protected, well insulated. Now, if you haven't heard or have seen this video where the U.S., I think the Navy SEALs, they seized basically this oil tanker off the coast of Venezuela, and it's been declassified and it's been shown to the public. And basically it's just kind of this viral clip that's going around. And of course, on both sides of the fence, people are, saying all sorts of things. And then just the other day, Trump classified fentanyl as a weapon of mass destruction. And this is according to a press release, as well as an entire conference where he brought all of the military brass. And a lot of people have been trying to identify who these people are. And these are not your quote unquote TV generals. And if you know, the lingo, Trump talks a lot about having these TV generals that are fake versus the real ones that were on behind the scenes and doing all the actual work. And so again, here, I'm not going to read all of them, but stating the big guys that are doing crazy heavy lifting of the actual military operation. And then here, Hello George talks about how, reminding us about the Executive Order 13818, where it's talking about blocking the property of persons involved in serious human rights abuse or corruption. And this was signed December 20th, 2017. Executive Order 13848, talking about imposing certain sanctions in the event of foreign interference in a United States election, September 12th, 2018. And then Executive Order 13903, combating human trafficking and online child exploitation in the United States. That was January 31st, 2020. And then Executive Order 13928, blocking property of certain persons associated with the International Criminal Court, June 11th, 2020. Now, I find that very interesting at a time when Trump, again, is tweeting a lot of things or truthing a lot of things. But here in particular, he's talking about Venezuela, and of course, all the rhetoric, everything that's been building up to this, and all the ships, you're seeing that, just, people talking about flights and tracking that. This is what he said here. He said, "Venezuela is completely surrounded by the largest armada ever assembled in the history of South America. It will only get bigger, and the shock to them will be nothing they have ever seen before until such time as they returned to the United States of America all of the oil, land, and other assets that they previously stole from us. The illegitimate Maduro regime is using oil from these stolen oil fields to finance themselves, drug, terrorism, human trafficking, murder, and kidnapping. For the theft of our assets and many other reasons, including terrorism, drug smuggling, and human trafficking, the Venezuelan regime has been designated a foreign terrorist organization." And so he continues to talk about how he's going to order a complete and total blockade of all sanctioned oil tankers going into and out of Venezuela. And again, this comes at a time where people are thinking, oh, this is crazy. They're, taking over ships and taking the oil and seizing that. But again, this was illegal, unsanctioned oil. So this is coming to and fro from other countries, and this is funding what the Maduro regime is doing. And so he's making a strong declaration. Now, this is a nice little Easter egg, and people are speculating what this means, but look at what he says and talks about with regards to the 10th Mountain Division.
By Secretary of War Pete Hegseth, Attorney General Pam Bondi, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs, General Dan Kane, Commander of U.S. Northern Command, General Gregory Gill, Commander of the Southern Border Task Force, Major General Scott Noman, Command Sergeant Major Brett Johnson of the U.S. Army's 10th Mountain Division, Administrator of the Drug Enforcement Agency, Terry Cole, and many other members of our administration who have done an incredible job on the border.
Now, what's interesting is that Q talks about in post 4414 the 10th Mountain Division, and this with Red 1, Red 2, and I'll just read all of it, but Red 1, POTUS Twitter removal. Red 2, Central Communications blackout, continental U.S. Red 3, class movement, Pelosi or Pence. Red 4, movement of military assets. 10th Mountain, 1st Marine, CPSD Marine to central locations under guise of citizen right control. And Red 5, National Military Comm Center. Red 6, Secretary of Defense, Instruct 1. And so Castle Rock, another big thing, but people can talk about, oh, Marine versus Army and all that stuff. But again, this is interesting because he's talking about the 10th Mountain Division. And this goes back to speculation of what's going on behind the scenes in this whole takedown of the deep state. And so what I want to just briefly prep you guys on is that I believe that we're going into some crazy times with the offense. Secretary of War and just everything being changed there. We are moving into a posture of offense. And I want to allow people to prepare, brace themselves, and prayerfully consider how we need to be able to discern this time. Because again, people are going to demonize Trump, they're going to demonize the military, the white hats, and all these things. And again, depending on how you get news, you can look at Venezuela, you can look at the regime and say, oh, that's crazy, leave them alone, and all that stuff. But what we're seeing here is the elites, the Illuminati or deep state, whatever you want to call it, they're trying to separate, they're trying to divide, they're trying to bring down the population of the U.S., meaning, in whatever way they can, with divisions of all these different ideologies, in race, religion, in drugs, and all these crazy things that are trying to distract us fundamentally away from God. And what we're seeing is the battle of good versus evil being played out in real time. And white hats, Trump and these guys, they are trying to fight when there is this narrative war going on in all of it to cloud the judgment of the people. And so this is what's happening, and we've got to prayerfully consider what it is that's coming. And if this storm is coming, if it's Trump warning us that, my fellow Americans, the storm is upon us, this is where we need to be able to prayerfully discern and understand what's going on. So I'm going to try my best to try to bring to you guys some updates, some news going forward. I want to at least bring this to your guys' attention before we see the announcement, at least at the time of posting this video, and what he's going to say. And of course, it could be small, it could be nothing, but what we're seeing is a lot of action happening behind the scenes that we are not privy to. That, again, as Trump said, he's not going to announce what they're going to do. Never again will the military announce what they're going to do, because it's going to disrupt the secrecy of what's going on behind the scenes. So again, be blessed, be encouraged, guys. A lot's happening. Just wanted to give you guys this. Love you guys. Talk to you guys very soon.